Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to Circling Seattle Sports on Converge Media. I am your host, Charles, joined by Bel. As always, we are now, 3 to 4 weeks into the month of February. We
Yeah.
had a little bit of a lighter week. That changes this week. We're back to the important stuff, and we're just going to get into it with some coaching news. That's kind of what we've only had with the Seahawks the last few months, but coaching staff news and some interesting things with our wide receiver.
And
So
interesting things around the league.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
that's for sure. So Belle, why don't you lead us into the Seahawks here?
let's do it. So, interesting things about our wide receiver, DK Metcalf. He was playing through an injury for most of the season. He has recently had surgery and is in a boot. He'd said that it bothered him all season and it should only be a minor setback for him. Would you like to take it away with our official coaching staff?
So we have the 2022 coaching staff. The list was finally announced. I know we've had sort of some things with Clint Hurt being announced as the defensive coordinator, some hirings here and there, and someone who was here for like a week in Ed Donatel, who
Yeah.
his Seahawks
If
tenure
that.
very short. But we do have the 2022 coaching staff, so we'll take a look here on the offensive side of things. Pete Carroll is obviously your head coach, but he also serves the role of executive vice president. You can take a look at the list on your screen here. I won't read them all just because it's a decently long size list, and you can have it on your screen here. But the notable ones being Shane Waldron staying as your offensive coordinator, Nate Carroll still a senior offensive assistant. Yes, Nate Carroll is related to Pete Carroll, in case you were curious about that. Andy Dickerson taking the offensive line spot, as we thought. Kerry Joseph as the assistant quarterbacks coach, Sanjay Lal taking over as the offensive passing game coordinator and the wide receivers coach. So that's the offensive side of the ball there. As we shift over to defense, as we mentioned, Clint Hurt, the defensive coordinator spot, Larry H to the Izzo, as Bell has been saying all before the show started. The special teams coordinator still, Aaron Curry, former Seahawk linebacker. The assistant defensive line and defensive end coach taking that role recently. Sean Desai, who we've been talking about for weeks now, the assistant head coach of the defense, which is still kind of a bizarre title. But two other names that I want to look at here so we've got three former coaches on the defensive side three former players, pardon me, on the defensive side of the ball. And and Aaron Curry, Deshaun Shedd taking over the assistant defensive backs coaching role a year ago, I believe. And Will Tukuafu, former fullback and defensive tackle, taking over in the quality control spot, which is kind of interesting to look at there. It's not the biggest deal in the world, considering that it's not like Will Tukuafu was. I'm not anything to put down on Will Tukuafu, but just sort of interesting to look at, some of these former Seahawks coming back to take over coaching roles. I know somebody that I would like to see in a coaching role is Cam Chancellor.
Yeah.
Will that happen? It doesn't. I remember asking Cam. I was like, there was an autograph signing. I said, "Do you want to go into coaching?" He says, "No, not not at the moment." But obviously, we've seen things change with the snap of a finger.
Yeah.
So, but it was certainly nice to see, that we can get a list and see who's going to be a part of it. Because as we've been talking about ever since the season ended, it's another big off season, right? And these are this coaching staff really is going to be in charge of a lot. And adjustments is something I always talk about. And that was brought up on the 17th in a press conference from our new defensive coordinator, Clint Hurt. So do you want to take a look at some of the key points from that press conference?
Yeah. So again, Clint Hurt press conference on the 17th. He has insisted that the defense would be more aggressive this coming season and that we won't see defensive linemen dropping into coverage. So very positive note there.
It should have happened in the first place.
Yeah. We can only improve, and that's what he's going to do. So
I love Puna Ford, but in coverage, no, please, no.
And then he also had some notes on Pete Carroll's involvement. So he made it clear that Carroll's willing and able to adapt and adjust. And that was one of the first things the two discussed when Hurt joined the coaching staff in 2017. He's given full autonomy. So that's a big deal when you're in a position, right? You want to be able to call the shots.
And I know that that's kind of been a thing that, has been floated around in the fan base is that, it's Pete Carroll's defense, right? And he's as a former defensive coach, someone who has influence at the secondary. It was like, oh, is Hurt just like a yes man? And it just seemed like from the comments that were made that it's like, no, this is my job.
Right.
This is my defense. I mean, it'll be great to take things from him because of the experience he has. But that's kind of what Hurt said. Hey, there's no merit to that.
Yeah. And he realizes that he's going to have someone to answer to, that being Pete Carroll, but he's up for the challenge. So that's good. And he also spoke about Desai's hiring. He said, I love the fact that he had his year of being a play caller this past season in Chicago. There's no doubt in my mind he's going to get that opportunity again in the NFL, and deservedly so. But he's somebody I consider a blessing that I can lean on. He's been through it already for a year, what I'm getting ready to go through now. So sort of a mentorship there. And luckily he has, again, like he said, someone to lean on in Pete Carroll and Desai.
Yeah, that's something good to have. I mean, that's what I think we talked about when we were looking at candidates, right? It was like somebody that I like having experience in that field. It would be nice, but obviously there are people that don't take that route. It's like, oh, I was already a DC and like with Desai in Denver, right? Oh, I'm gonna come in, if that respect is there within the coaching staff already in the organization, sure, let's take that bet. But it doesn't help at all to have, those other names that can say, hey, in like a 4-3, and I know they're talking about going to a 3-4. How can we like integrate that? I know Denver does that a lot. Mm-hmm. Denver's typically historically a 3-4 team. Von Miller before that trade was made, it's like, hey, how can we really take our personnel that we're going to have this upcoming, like Bobby Wagner? How is Bobby Wagner going to fit in a 3-4 defense? Yeah. So I'm sure, having that experience, that's what I was talking about with looking at adding, more potential to that defensive staff, more experience. Brock Huard to use too many cooks in the kitchen, which I think is stupid in that regard, because why would you not want to have all those defensive minds in there?
Right.
When you're trying to get this defense that, in the points aspect was good, but in terms of like everything else, yardage and all that was bad, right? Mm-hmm. You've got a lot of talent in the defense, and you can have all this experience from different places where they've had different, player types, different talent, and be able to utilize that, through those different lines. So I think that's only a good thing.
You would assume that some people would be bitter on taking that back seat, but hopefully they work together well.
Yeah, I would hope so.
Yeah.
Right.
He also mentioned that he eventually wants to be a head coach. So
it's an interesting thing.
Do we see Pete Carroll leaving anytime soon?
No. I don't, unless Hurt comes out and has a great first few years. I don't know if he's your successor in that department. I know that Carroll, I think he signed through 25. Mm-hmm. That, whether he plays out that contract or not, I think the organization's like the loyalty there is like, hey, you've done a lot here. You've obviously made a great culture. You've had a great impact on the league. We'll let you play out that contract. I don't see him coaching past 2025, but it could come sooner than that.
Yeah.
Would Hurt be that guy? I don't know. I don't know at this point, but it's obviously going to be his first year as a defensive coordinator, had some time in the organization itself. Let it play out. Let's see. Let's have this conversation week 17 of week 18. Sorry, of this upcoming year. Yeah. But at the moment, unsure. I'm going to say no at the moment, at least for him being his successor.
Good news is also that he mentioned that he thinks the world of Quandre Diggs and DJ Reed, and he wants to have those guys back on his defense. So that's, again, good news. We saw good progress from those guys throughout the season, and it'd be great to continue to have them on the defense. On February 18th, the Seahawks reported that they're planning on adding 2 new video boards to the north side of Lumen Field, flanking the east and west side of the current video board above the Hawks' nest. The hope is to have them installed by next season. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting just because at least if you look at the Hawks' nest side of the stadium, there's a lot of like there's those places where, I mean, the Hawks' nest goes like that, and then there's this open space. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that big of a deal. I'm interested to see how those boards are held up, because unless you like add I'm sure there's some. I'm not an engineering major, so I can't give you an idea of what that would look like. I don't know. I don't think it might be better for the fan experience,
Right.
because I know that board that's above the Hawks nest is like really up and
Up there.
down.
Yeah.
So to have it wider I think would be fine. But overall, I'm not too big on the reporting on the fan experience side of
Yeah.
things, unless it was like a major thing, like, oh, the team store is gonna offer, a trade in your jersey for a new one, kind of thing.
Oh, coming from a team store employee for Seattle teams.
I don't know what you're talking about.
In more exciting news, DK Metcalf says that he's going to train for the 2024 Olympics. What are we looking at here? Like a short distance run?
Short
What
distance,
do you think?
yeah. Because I know he had some trials that he did where he finished last, but at the same time, you're talking about an NFL athlete who doesn't practice in those short relay kind of things, and you're training against guys who train their whole life for this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It'll be kind of interesting. He said it's going to happen. It'll be interesting to think about that. How much that will take away from his, season training. Well, I don't know when that's Summer Olympics, right? I think.
Yeah, I think that's
so. I don't think it'll take away from too much, but I'm just wondering how much, like, when he'll start to prepare for that, right? Because that's 2 years away now.
Well, you would think that it would possibly add to his skill on the field as well if he's practicing his distance running, right?
But it's like two very different things.
Yeah,
running straight.
Whereas
in skin tight clothes compared to wearing pads and worrying about someone
running routes. Yeah.
So it's interesting, and hey, all power to him. If it works out, it works out
for sure.
But I'm not too concerned about it, I guess.
Well, Olympic athlete on a resume doesn't sound bad, so let's hope to see him out there. The league also reported that 112.3 million people watched Super Bowl 56. NBC says that the Rams versus Bengals was the most watched TV show in 5 years, which is surprising to me, honestly.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
It goes back to what we were talking about last week, though, with the MLB, and like, football is king in this country.
Yes.
That shows it. 5 years.
Yeah.
5 years. I mean, tell me, if I were to look up the numbers of the most watched World Series game, it probably wouldn't stack up to that. So that's why it's like, hey, with what we're going to get to in the lockout sort of section, it's not even the Mariners section anymore.
It's just the lockout section.
It just shows, though. I mean, we were talking about numbers last week. There's a number for you.
Yeah.
It just shows you've got a place to grow, and you want to do better on that. But also, speaking about doing better with this combine thing.
Yeah, the players and representatives are concerned about changes to the combine schedule. Players will have to do measurements, bench press, and on-field workouts all in the same day. According to a league source, the change in the schedule was based largely on feedback from prospects in previous years. So, I don't know. As an athlete, do you think that you could do all 3 of them more consistently on one day, or would you want that rest?
Well, I know that when athletes have the pro days at their own colleges, they do it all in the same day. But I don't know. It's kind of been. I mean, this conversation spans over a couple of days. Like, that was the first report on the 16th that came out, and then we have more news on that as the days progress. So it's interesting. I think more of it is the bubble-like atmosphere that will be at the combine.
Yeah.
Because it's reported that the players will not be able to have like personal trainers or masseuses come and see them because I mean, a combine really can make or break your career. Like, if you have a bad combine, hey, like, unless a team takes a chance on you and you're able to make the most of that chance, you could be screwed.
Right.
And there are some players who will have a great combine, and that jettisons them into a draft pick higher than they probably should have gone, right? So the combine has a lot of leeway, a lot of weight on where you're going to be selected, usually, right? Unless, like, you look at some player who, had a really great season, but then he skips the combine. There could be questions about, hey, like an injury. Is his leg still okay? I think Jalen Waddle busted his leg up in that title. He had his leg busted up in that title game that Alabama played. I believe it was the one against Clemson. And the questions were like, hey, is that going to affect his draft stock? He had a pretty solid year,
Yeah.
So it's interesting. You want to do your best if you get that combine invite. But it is interesting to see that the NFL is saying that the changes were based on feedback from actual prospects. And then knowing that they already do that on their pro day, they already put that all in the same. I don't know. It might be like, hey, I'm going to lift on my pro day, but I'm not going to lift for the combine. So I think more of it is that bubble-like atmosphere.
Yeah.
And we do have some other points to look at in the other days,
and the belief is that the new schedule will lead many players to skip their bench press in favor of on-field work. And I kind of understand that. Why wouldn't you want to show how dynamic you are on the field? So I guess you'd
stuff like the 3-cone drill and the 40 time and like the vertical, as opposed to lift. You can lift as strong as you want, but that doesn't always translate. But speaking about guys that lift a lot, I mean, you want to look at the 17th there with somebody that I would hope retires, but I don't think he will.
And based off of his success, I didn't think he would. Aaron Donald, apparently the Rams superstar defensive tackle, reportedly may need to become the NFL's highest paid defensive player to stay with the Rams. He stated that if the Rams brought everybody back, that he would be ready to return, which isn't completely surprising. They had a good season. I think McVay said that they would bring the super team back that they built. So why not keep it that way and see where that success can take them?
It's interesting though to see the terminology that he used. He said if they brought everybody back, he would be ready to return. So
who do you think is everybody in that?
Odell, Von Miller. I think those are the only guys that are really kind of up in the air. But it's interesting though that I didn't think that report when we looked at the Super Bowl, right? I didn't think that had any merit. I'm like, oh, that's just that's just somebody trying to get a headline, or I thought it was just nerves for him, because I know if you watch the mic'd up for that Super Bowl against the Patriots, he's freaking out, dude. He's like breathing really heavy, and he didn't really have much of a contribution in that Super Bowl. So I'm sure it was like, oh, I thought he was just being exaggerative. But it seems like there might be some merit to that. Like, oh, you got to roll out the Brinks truck, right? And then you got to bring everybody back, which kind of seems like countering statements because cap space and all that sort of thing. But it is interesting to see that there is some merit to that report that, hey, I might be done, which would be great. But
great for the Seahawks division.
I'm sure it seemed like that Beckham seems like he would want to come back. Von Miller, I don't know, because he said, there was an interview he did leading up to the Super Bowl where he said, hey, I didn't want to leave Denver.
I would stay in Denver.
They traded me. So he could be done. I'm sure, I got another ring. I'm going back to Denver. Screw this,
That'd be interesting.
I would be fine with it. Keep him in we do have to play Denver this year.
Denver's on the schedule this year.
But they've got Drew Lock still at quarterback. So until that changes, I'm not, But that is, I mean, it's something that we have to look at, considering that Aaron Donald technically is, at this moment, is still in the NFC West. So, that. Plus, we look at the NFL on the 18th. Roger Goodell is reportedly negotiating a new deal, which, take that as you will, how you feel about the commissioner. Is likely to receive a new contract extension in the coming months. I'm not as, the only thing with looking at commissioners of these sports, we'll transition over here to the lockout in a second. Usually it's more so of there's a group behind the commissioner. The commissioner's like the face of everything, right? He's like who you put your blame on as compared to the actual group that, is making these decisions. Like in terms of the lockout, the MLB owners made that decision, right? It wasn't Rob Manfred said, screw it.
Lockout.
he had a little button on his desk.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Goodell, I could care less for. I don't know who you bring in as a new commissioner, but I think he plays it out for a while.
Yeah.
So back to that prospect thing. I mean, on the 20th, there were reports that the prospects may boycott that combine, with 155 players being prepared to announce a formal boycott due to its bubble sort of protocols, including boycotting testing, workouts, interviews. Which would, I mean, this is kind of an ongoing thing because the combine is obviously, like we've talked about, is a big deal. But it seems like there's kind of varying things. I mean, we look at the other thing on the 20th that Sean McVay could be offered a $15 million deal to go to TV. But with what he was saying at the parade, I don't think he's going to look at that right now, with saying run it back and all of that, which I'll be happy to look back at that clip when the Rams lose in the divisional next year or whatever. I don't have that much faith.
Hot take.
Someone, write it down. We'll look at it next season. But then on the 21st, do you want to look at what happened on the 21st today?
The NFL is partnering with the XFL. So XFL agrees to give NFL a petri dish to experiment with proposed rules, develop officials, and more. Part owner of the league, Danny Garcia, states that the XFL will not be a development league for the NFL. So what do you think this is? A money partnership?
Yeah, I mean, the league talks about wanting player safety. That's like, oh, we want to, they have their own safety committee and all that. But I know the XFL had a really good run with their version of the XFL, the kickoffs, right? They had a ton of kickoffs and they had no major injuries as compared to the NFL standard kickoffs where, I know it's gotten better in years past with rule changes and all that, but the kickoff is something that a lot of people have said, hey, just remove it entirely, especially with how many touchbacks we get and how few returns we get. So I think it's a good thing, especially with the way that the XFL has had to close its doors twice.
Yeah.
And its kind of bizarre existence and reiterations. I think it's a good thing because you probably will get some funding and keep that league around, and it gives players more opportunities. If you don't, I know there was one player who played for St. Louis in the XFL who didn't want to play another year in college. He went to the XFL and he signed with an NFL team. It's just another opportunity to go and play that sport, and the XFL plays in the spring. So it's not like it would clash with the NFL, which would kill its ratings.
Right.
It's just another opportunity. I think it's a good thing. I think that was something I've talked about on the podcast of this show. Like a year ago, I said, hey, you guys should team up. It's like, obviously there is fan interest, right? It's just, sometimes starting an entire league is a little tough, so I think it's only a good thing.
Yeah.
It'll be a good thing.
Hopefully moving forward, they can be as successful as the NBA with the G League and being able to bring players up and whatnot. So,
and as long as there's a Seattle team still, it's okay. If I get rid of a Seattle team, I lose a little bit of interest.
Yeah, for sure. You want to go ahead and move things over to our lockout segment.
We do have that one little note about the agents don't want a boycott. Representatives advising these prospects to hold off in workouts until pro days if Combine's bubble protocols remain. So it kind of seems like it's more of the bubble. I was more interested in thinking that it was about the with moving all the workouts on one day, which, I mean, I don't know if you put bench press and doing all those in-person drills, it seems like a lot for one day.
For sure.
Because if I absolutely go ham, on the bench press, how am I going to do in a 3-cone drill, later on in the day? I might be exhausted, but
and
it
not
seems
having, like you said, that athletic trainer or masseuse.
To recover my body properly instead of I'm just going to go sit in the hotel, so that's, I mean, it's something to watch as the Combine, I believe it should be coming up. I think it's in March because I believe the draft is in April. Yeah. April, May. So it would be coming up, but that's something that we'll have to keep tabs on as the offseason progresses. But talking about progression in the offseason, we move over to our lockout now. But we do have, this is not exactly brand new stuff. But it just kind of makes, I guess, it official that the Mariners are expected to pursue two types of players once this lockout ends. We'll look over here. The Mariners are reportedly looking towards two different types of players, reportedly a right-handed power bat and a left-handed hitting multi-dimensional outfielder. Now, there are two players that exactly fit this role, one of them being from Seattle. Michael Conforto is from Seattle. He had a lot of offers from in-state schools, but decided to go to Oregon State. Spent time with the Mets. He's 28 years old, pardon me. And then Chris Bryant. Now, Chris Bryant is friends with reliever Paul Seawolves. Paul Seawolves was able to convince him to go to the same college, and he's been kind of egging him. That would be nice to have some well, hey man, come on, let's go to Seattle. I mean, we at
Yeah.
the current moment, I believe Abraham Toro is your third baseman, which I like Toro. I think he's okay. But if you could get Chris Bryant, who can play at the third base spot, who's got more experience there, I say you do it. A guy who's won an MVP, has that playoff experience, has that World Series experience. That could already there. If you just talk about the experience alone, that would help out this clubhouse greatly. So Conforto and Chris Bryant were two of the guys that had been. I mean, like I said, this is a report that we've already looked at this months ago, at least Twitter wise. I had seen this happening before the lockout happened when we were in free agency still. But it's kind of nice to know that this isn't just some guy out on Twitter saying, "Oh, the Mariners are looking at Chris Bryant."
Yeah.
Ooh. It's like this is we got a more reputable source talking about that. But now to our lockout tracker. On the 17th, a meeting took place that lasted 15 minutes. So that wasn't exactly the greatest thing. And then the league informed the players' union that a new collective bargaining agreement must be agreed upon by the 28th of this month to begin the 2022 regular season on time. That would obviously cut down a lot of spring training. But
That's
it would
a week from now.
Yeah, it would get the regular season started on time, right? On the 18th, spring training games canceled through March 5th. So we would have had games already, but those are canceled up until next month on the 5th. Both sides agreed to meet again on Monday, today, reportedly all throughout the week in an attempt to ramp up urgency. I had said this, hey, you got to lock both sides into a building and do not let them leave until this is sorted, because like that 15-minute, that can't happen.
It's like when you have to let a child cry it out.
Pretty much. It's like I can't just like let it happen in spurts and like let it continuously take place. 15 minutes and then a week break. That can't happen. If you're serious about wanting to get this sport going again and getting this all going, you can't just say, 50, blah, 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 blah. Oh, we're done. Screw this.
Yeah.
We'll see you next week, right? That's so both sides were supposed to meet today, and we do have something like that's taking place currently. I keep refreshing it to see if anything's updated. But also on that day, that is the 18th, the MLBPA made a statement about the league pushing back spring training, saying Major League Baseball announced today that it must postpone the start of spring training games. This is false. Nothing requires the league to delay the start of spring training, much like nothing required the league's decision to implement the lockout in the first place. Despite these decisions by the league, players remain committed to the negotiation process. With that negotiation process on the 25th, as of today, the 21st, the MLB and the Players Association have been in a meeting since 10 o'clock this morning, 10 o'clock Pacific time. It is currently 2:52 this morning, and have not come out of that building. So checking with Jesse Rogers, who is a MLB on ESPN reporter, the last tweet we got was an hour ago stating that the MLB and the MLBPA have been inside Roger Dean Stadium for over 3 hours.
Oh my gosh.
It is unclear how much time they spent together or in different rooms, but neither side has come out yet. So this is the furthest we've had since it began.
Let's hope they come to some sort of agreement.
Yeah, I don't know if anything, like we'll get a deal today. I mean, I'd love it. I wouldn't say no.
Yeah.
But it seems like, the talk was that they were going to have several meetings over the week. And I mean, this taking 3 hours is already a start.
Yeah.
Right. So it's something that I can actually say there was some positive, because every other week the past few weeks has been like they met for like 10 minutes.
Yeah. 3 hours is good.
It's basically like, okay, here's our proposal. Oh, this is crap. Oh, you don't like our proposal? We'll see you in a week. And it's happened like the past. So hopefully there's actually some back and forth going on today, and for however many days they need to continue to hopefully come to an agreement by that deadline date of next Monday, the 28th. Yeah. I mean, it's also good to just have an actual deadline and not just be like, oh, we're just kind of figuring it out.
Just go with the
know
flow.
That there's something like, hey, here's a target date, get it figured out by then. Instead of like, if I know I've got a target date to do something or a deadline, it kind of helps me more instead of, oh, you've got all this free time, figure it out whenever. It's like, oh, well, then I'm going to play with it a little bit. The reason for the 15 minutes, because then you're like, oh, we got more time. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Well, moving on to some exciting news here, which we already saw coming, but still exciting. Sue Bird was officially signed. She
was super open to just coming back, surprisingly, for the veteran minimum, and did that so that the Storm can sign whoever they needed to hopefully have a successful season. Because again, like we said, it feels like championship or bust. So we're happy to have Birdie back, and we're happy that she's such a team player and took some less money than deserved, I guess, so that she could get some of her team members back on the team.
It's something to look at, though, considering the report that we got during the WNBA free agency show on ESPN. I mean, the report from Holly Rowe was that Bird was going to say, hey, go sign whoever you need to, whoever we can get. I will take whatever salary is left. And now that moment happened.
Right, she's officially signed.
There's like 2 to 3 roster spots still open. Whether that's going to come from the draft, with whatever picks we may have, or training camp deals, when we get closer to camp, I don't know. I am a little concerned about this. I know we talked about it a few weeks ago. Is this roster championship ready?
What would you say?
If we get Stewie for a full year in her Stewie form, and we get last year's Jewel Lloyd, Gabby Williams, continues to be a good defender and is able to hit from the 3-point line. I mean, that's a good start, but I was really hoping for another piece, a Tina Charles, somebody.
So you think the signing might have come too early, and it's
I was hoping to see other people.
Yeah.
It just seems like Phoenix uploaded on talent. I mean, we look at Phoenix. I'm sure they're they're a front runner. LA's got a good team. Liz Cambage, I don't think she ever considered Seattle, but she would have been, a nice big to have. It is a little concerning to me. I am interested to see, as I've mentioned, having that big three on its own is great, but knowing the talent Chicago brought everybody back.
They did.
And they added a former MVP, I believe it was Emma Messiman. When you have Candace Parker already, that's a big deal. So you've got Phoenix. LA has Asia Wilson, and I mean, it's
scary
Las
league
Vegas,
out there.
not LA. Sorry, Vegas. So it's like there's a lot of talent in this league. I think those teams right there are the contenders. I think Chicago has a good chance even to fight to continue to defend their title.
Are we putting too much pressure on our big three here then?
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. It's like, hey, here, we brought the band back together. Go take care of it. But it's like, again, we talked about with basketball. Every championship team, or every good team, let alone championship team, has a good supporting cast. I mean, if we look at who's the best, I don't really follow the NBA that well, but who's the best team? And Phoenix.
Yeah,
Phoenix has a good bench.
Ends, yeah.
It's like you're gonna need that.
Mm-hmm.
I know with Vegas, when the Storm played Vegas in the 2020 finals, Vegas had a good bench. Kelsey Plum, I believe she won 6th Woman of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
As a point guard up, I would like to see Kelsey Plum in Seattle at some point.
That would be nice. Speaking it into existence, hopefully.
But even on the Seattle side, both teams had good benches. I mean, you had Sammy Whitcomb, who was a spark plug off the bench. You had to trade to the Liberty to get rid of some cap space. You had Natasha. I would love to have Natasha Howard back.
Mm-hmm.
There was talent up and down that. But Jordan Canada, who is now with the Sparks, was on that bench. I don't know. I can tell you right now, I don't know. Unless we see some big jumps, I like the gradual increases that we've seen from Mercedes Russell over the years, sure. To see Ezzy Magbegor is still young and has had, valuable minutes, sure. But I would have just I'm always, whether it's in scores or rosters, I always like to have that insurance to know, hey, you have that other big piece outside of your normal big pieces. They're going to give you a fighting chance.
That's what championship teams usually have, yeah.
Well, take the Rams, right? I admit it. I was like, you traded away all your picks. You're stupid. You got a title. How much does that mean? One title though? Is it just we're cashing in for one and then we're bust?
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see because every Super Bowl team loses valuable veterans. They always do. The Seahawks making it to back was great, but after that, who's left from those teams? Russell Wilson and Bobby Wagner are left from the entire roster. Russell Wilson and Bob Wagner are like your oldest tenured players now, which is wild to think about. So it's like every championship team is going to lose some. Chicago didn't really lose much,
No.
So that's where I'm worried about is
Yeah.
like
It's a
you get what
scary
I'm,
league.
is like
Yeah,
you were saying. I think what you said is really important. Are you putting too much pressure on the big three to be able to go and like go toe to toe with a Chicago, with a Phoenix, when you're already rivals with Phoenix?
Mhm.
I mean, we look at who they've signed. They still got Diana Taurasi, who's still like year after year, like just like Sue Bird has hung around.
Signed Tina Charles.
Yeah, it's like, do you need her? Yeah, and she took a low deal for that.
She did.
Are you telling me that we couldn't? It'll be. It's always interesting for me to see with these signings after the fact. It's like, did we even offer? Because I know sometimes Pete Carroll will be like, "Oh, we were in the running."
But were we?
Yeah, it's like, did you put a deal in? Did you put an offer in? Or are you just saying that? Oh, we always look at everything. So I don't know. I'm a little concerned.
Yeah.
In that department.
More to look forward to as hopefully they continue to add to the team, like you said, in one way. So, would you take it away for our Sounders news?
Yes. So I know that last week we, talked about. I was spot on both of those things, both the kit design, and the training facility. But we do have an actual game to look at. Over the past week, in the first game, it's not technically MLS regular season yet, but it's Leagues Cup, CONCACAF Champions League. The Sounders were able to get a 0-0 draw with Motagua. It was, I can't really say that anybody really stood out. It was a 0-0 draw. There wasn't too much action. Seattle was able to get a couple shots that hit the crossbar, and even Motagua was able to do that as well. But it's round one. It's leg one of a 2-leg thing. So nobody scored. So there's no aggregate going into this game on the 24th in Seattle. But it was nice to get, some younger faces out there, considering that the whole roster wasn't with the team yet. And to see some debuts. I know Rusnak had probably the closest chance for the Sounders. So, I mean, there's some positivity there. I know Nico Ladero played a good amount. And that's probably my biggest question is, coming off of a season where you kind of bounced in and out of health, with an off season, are you healthy now? What can we expect from that? And if he's not healthy, you have Albert Rusnak, who scored 11 goals and had 11 assists last year, who can replicate that production that a Nico Ladero normally has. Mm-hmm. But perhaps the most important things of the past week, we have on the 15th, the club officially unveiled the new primary kit. It is Legacy Green is the name of the kit here. You can see on the screen, they've got that sort of checker design like we talked about and we looked at from that 2019 MLS Cup at home. Here's another photo.
What do you think? You like the checkered look?
I'm okay with it. I mean, I'm not. I had some friends text me, "Oh, it's ugly. Oh, I hate it." Some people already hate it for the Zulily design, the Zulily sponsorship on the front. Mm-hmm. It's kind of hard to follow up when you have Xbox, as your sponsor.
Yeah.
I don't care. I don't really care. It's fine. It's still, I mean, you've got the rave green is still the color there. You're looking to really all of the Sounders kits in recent years have commemorated something about the city. With the Jimi Hendrix kit, it's self-explanatory. Right. There's Jimi Hendrix, and you talk, I mean, on the back of the kit in the neck here, it says we have to stand side by side. It talks about, the connection that the fans have, in terms of the Sounders fan base. The Nightfall kit with the black and the pink. The pink was inspired by a Seattle sunset over a Sounders game. And now with the checker design with that MLS Cup victory at home. Winning a title at home is a big deal. Mm-hmm. So the design, I don't think it's too overbearing. I think if the checkers were all over, it would be a little too much. Yeah. But with having the design here, we'll look back at it on the front. I don't think that's that big of a deal.
No, it's just a stripe right down the center there.
I don't think that's that big of a deal. But, it's that was the thing with the Hendrix kit. I know that there was a lot of outrage with Seattle having a purple kit. When it's, you normally wear blue and green. Why is there purple? And then it's sold out for like a year. As we talked about working with the team store. Yes, it sold out for like a year. I would know. It was, we couldn't get them.
You can't please everyone, but there's obviously going to be people out there that are going to be happy with the design.
Yeah. So I say give it when we're in March, it'll be, oh, I actually kind of like it.
Yeah.
Give it a little bit. I know there are some jerseys that are like, this looks terrible. I don't know. Has there been any NFL that really? I don't know. And it was some of like the MLB city designs. It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, same for the NBA city design jerseys.
Oh yeah, it's like some of them you automatically, this looks bad.
We're still committed fans at the end of the day, and we're still going to buy the jerseys.
Who is this we? No. But the other big news on the 16th of the month was that the club unveiled their new training facility in Long Acres, Renton, coming in 2024. So we take a look at the mock design here. You can kind of see on the left-hand side of the screen, there's the sort of headquarters building, and then you've got the fields. So the location of Long Acres in Renton used to hold a racetrack from 1933 to 1992. That horse racing has all since moved to Emerald Downs in Auburn of the state. During World War II, the facility was used as a temporary artillery barracks, which, if you like history, there's your go. The land was purchased by Boeing in 1990, and for the longest time used as the company's corporate headquarters until recently. I think Boeing moved to Chicago, was it? I don't know.
I don't know, actually.
I knew they moved their headquarters. That was kind of a big deal. So that kind of opened the door for this facility to be used somewhere else. So I'll show you some photos here. There's that closer design. So the facilities and amenities, there will be a 41,300 square foot renovation across the already 301,000 square foot main building that exists that you can see there on the left-hand side, turning it into a new facility and front office headquarters. Attached to that will be a viewing deck, an outdoor patio. Both of those will have viewing access to the 4 training fields with hopes to add a 5th field. So there will be opportunities to watch practice. I don't know how often that will be, but it won't be like a closed door thing necessarily. There will be 10 acres of land activation that will be used for those 4 fields that I mentioned, 2 natural and 2 artificial turfs. I know.
Is there a preference normally?
Well, I know I love comparing, right? Mm-hmm. Like with the NFL and Odell Beckham's injury on the turf, that was a big thing. A lot of players, why are we still playing on turf?
Right, yeah.
I know that with the World Cup coming up, a lot is like, hey, you need to be playing on natural grass. That's a big deal. But I know like the NFL, turf is a big deal. Like I don't think it was this year. I think it was last year with the 49ers. They had a bunch of people get injured when they went to MetLife. And it was like, oh, the turf monster, So that's, I think, and I don't necessarily mind, but it's always kind of nice when you're running on natural grass, at least in my estimation. And that kind of seems to be the overwhelming favorite, at least among the athletes that I can see. I don't see anyone, oh, I love turf, It just kind of seems to be that alternative where, you don't necessarily have to take care of turf as much as you do, the natural grass. And, so that it might be a money thing, but I think it's good that they'll have a mix of both at the training facility. Yeah. And that could be coming into play, with the 2026 World Cup bid, because I'm sure teams could use that when they're practicing for the World Cup games, because I know that's a big sticking point is even at Lumen Field, they're talking about having natural grass put in because of the World Cup to lure that in. And continuing here, I'll show off more photos. The gang's all here. The Sounders first team, the Tacoma Defiance, which is like the Sounders sort of minor league, and the Sounders Academy will all be at Long Acres. The facility will also house the team's business, front office, and sports science operations. The facility is designed by Generator Studio, which actually designed the Kraken's practice facility up in Northgate, the community iceplex. What I wanted to say with that regard is, if you go to the iceplex, there's a lot of opportunities to watch practice. They'll announce days that you'll be able to watch practice. I know that there are a few rinks there that fans can use. That's like, recreational, beer leagues, kids skating, public skating, hurling, broom ball.
Yeah, community engagement.
Yeah, I don't know how much of that will be at Long Acres, but I do have some things that I'll note about that in a second. But I know that we're talking about the kit and change, right? There are hints at a rebrand for the club coming on the 50th anniversary. It was noted that the current branding is effectively disconnected from the historic the historic brand and that they hope to integrate the two during the process. It was noted that this will ultimately be our fans deciding the look and feel of our marks going forward. There is a survey out where you can vote on these sort of things. I went through some of the questions. It's like, how often do you go to Sounders games? What does the club mean to you? There was a lot of stuff, and the Sounders tend to do a lot of that. They recognize that the fans have such a big impact. But it's interesting when you talk about a rebrand at all, right? I know with the Storm, with their rebrand, I was a little bit nervous because with this logo at first, I wasn't too sure. I was like, I don't know. But it kind of grew on me over time, right? I mean, you've got the Space Needle in there. You've got sort of the basketball design itself. And then you've got the little Storm aspect of it with the lightning bolt, right?
And this is all coming the same year that their training facility should open. Yeah.
Yes. So it'll be a big 2024 will be a big year, with our Reign friends, it was stated that they are always in constant communication with the Reign, but it said that they need to see how their future intersects with this project and that there are no current plans to have them at Long Acres. It still seems to be a possibility, though, but I mean, you've got 2 years to think about it.
Yeah.
Because the Reign are still training in Tacoma. I know we talked about it last week. Was say, hey, why don't they let them share?
Yeah.
And that would be a big help because I know at the Lumen Field press conference for the Reign, it was a world-class facility for world-class athletes. This would include that because the Reign still train in Tacoma on a high school pitch. So I think I'm going to hope that'll be just a matter of time. I know I nailed both of these right last week, but I'm hoping that I nailed that too, which we can see that. I don't know how soon that'll be. But again, if you want your players to have the ultimate practice, you want to be able to practice in the correct conditions, right? If you practice, on a beach and you have to go play on turf, it's a different thing, right?
Yeah. And with that 5th field even that they're looking to add, why not? That's more space.
Yeah.
Bring in the Reign.
Do you need 4? Do you need 4?
No, we need 5.
And some smaller notes here as I'll cycle through some of the photos again. There are discussions for this move. The discussions for this move started 6 months ago. They're planning to preserve the wetlands that are there at Long Acres that were added after the racetrack closed. The team is working on improving access to the Sounder train, which I know is a big deal that a lot of people take for Seahawks games. I don't know how many people take it on Sounders games, but anytime I go by the trains, there are a lot of people going on them.
Yeah.
Talks about creating a museum, which would be kind of a big deal to have a soccer museum, which I think would be pretty cool.
I mean, 50 years. That's a good amount of history you could put in a museum.
And that there will be, this is kind of a bigger thing, even though it's in the smaller notes section, that there will be 3,000 multifamily units on the property and a affordable housing component to development. So
that's awesome.
I think this kind of hints at, like with the Seahawks and Renton at the VMAC. I know a lot of players, when they don't have their own, if they're on a shorter contract and they don't know if they'll be in Seattle, they stay, I don't know if this is compromising anything, but I know a lot of them stay in the apartments like right next door to the facility.
Yeah.
Just go, it's like, oh, I gotta go to practice next door, So I think that would be, if you're like a younger player and you need hey, you can live right next to the facility, my guy. But I mean, that's kind of like with Northgate. I think that they're working on that still, but I believe there are plans to add more housing up near the facility. So it's community outreach kind of thing, just to keep people involved in sports and to, have them around an area that's more lively than just living in some random apartment, I guess. But it's a big deal because,
affordable housing right now is a big deal.
Well, that too. But, if we look at in terms of the training facility, the Sounders are going to be at Starfire until this is complete. And Starfire already hosts a team that we're going to introduce to the show in a little bit. But also knowing that it's used for actual like kids tournaments and all that. So it's like I have to, fight for practice time and share facilities when we could have our own building where I can go to practice and then we can go and watch film right after that in our own building. Right. So it'll be a big upgrade, and it's good to see that. It's good to see that announcement is coming. So,
and all that coming in 2024, huh?
Yes. So maybe I'll have my hair back. Looking ahead, so we've got 2 games this upcoming week for the Sounders. So 2 matches this week. This is exciting. The MLS regular season will start as well. So on the 24th of the month, the Sounders will take on Motagua with a 6 p.m. kickoff. That will determine whether or not Seattle continues on in the Leagues Cup. That is leg 2 of the round of 16. That's a winner take home game. If you win that game, you advance because there's no aggregate. It's not like you have to account for a goal that you gave up on the road. You gave up a 0-0 draw. That's Champions League. But on the 27th, on Sunday the 27th, with a 5 o'clock start, Seattle starts their sort of revenge tour, I guess, coming off of that first round exit against Real Salt Lake with a 5 o'clock start versus Nashville FC. So Sounders season's coming up. We're kind of waiting our way out of the weird February. It's almost like a desert.
Yeah.
It's like a weird
it definitely picked
news.
up this week.
Yeah. So with that being said, now we head over to our Kraken, who have kind of been the only team playing for the longest time. Over the past week, the team took on several teams, going 0-3 sadly this past week.
Yeah, not a good week.
On Valentine's Day, the team lost to the Toronto Maple Leafs 6-2. Played the game Kalle Järnkrok with a goal, an assist, 2 points, and 2 shots on goal. On the 17th, the team traveled to Winnipeg to play the Jets, losing that game 5-3. Played the game Jordan Eberle with 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points, 4 shots on goal, and a hit. And then on the 19th at the Calgary Flames, in Mark Giordano's return home to Calgary, I say home, doesn't live there, but he spent a good amount of time there.
Yeah.
Losing that game close, 1-2. Player of the game, Kalle Järnkrok with 1 goal, 1 point, 1 plus-minus, 1 shot on goal, 1 hit, and 1 takeaway. So tough week.
Yeah,
tough
kind of
0-3 week.
deflating.
It's tough because I know I keep looking back to it. That after the All-Star break, the players have said, hey, in this remainder of the season, you want to get better consistently and you want to improve on things. And like take the loss to Calgary. You had that game tied going late into the game and you give up, you turn the puck over and you give up a bad goal. This is stuff we saw in the beginning of the year. So stuff like that I want to see improved, and it's hanging around. So it's tough. But ultimately, I'll be the most concerned if we're a few months in next season and it's still happening, In more uplifting news, on the 17th of the month in that game against the Jets, the Kraken debuted the first ever all-black TV broadcast team featuring JT Brown and Everett Fitzhugh. So Everett currently does the radio play-by-play for the team. And the TV play-by-play announcer, John Forsland, was tapped to broadcast the Golden Knights versus Avalanche game the day before this, so he wasn't going to be able to make it. So JT Brown, he's not play, but color commentator, I believe is the correct term there. JT Brown and Everett Fitzhugh teamed up to create the league's first all-black TV broadcast. So that was really cool to see.
Are we going with this team moving forward, or
no, because Forsland's already the guy. It was just sort of a fill-in for the moment. But it was cool to see that. I know that Everett is the first ever black radio play-by-play guy in the NHL. So already setting that up. Everett's a cool guy. I talked to Everett at the hiring event for working with the Kraken, actually.
Yeah.
And I remember I was at a morning skate, which is the practice before the game. And I ran into Everett and he said, hey, if you should say hi to me more often, I can introduce you to the other beat guys, which, as somebody who's working on being an independent journalist already, that was cool to see, that he was able to make that time and he remembered me, let alone that. Every review I've seen of the guys, always a really positive reaction. And I know that those guys already have chemistry. So that was really cool to see. Wish it would have been a win. But I feel like I say that a lot with this team anyway. Yeah. But no, that was really cool to see that this team was able to set that history there, despite, whatever struggles that may be with the team itself.
Yeah. Hopefully they get that chance again moving forward.
That would, because it's like if Forsland ever needs to go do that again, you have somebody who's got that experience. I'm like, who do we throw in there? With that being said, the team record now sits at 16 wins, 31 losses. and 4 overtime losses, moving them to 36 points. Didn't win any games, so they didn't move anything. Still sitting at 8th in the Pacific Division. 4-game slate. Finishing their Canadian road trip tonight against the Vancouver Canucks with a 7 o'clock start. Coming back home for 2 games, the first of them on the 22nd versus the New York Islanders at 7 o'clock. Then the 24th versus the Boston Bruins at 7 o'clock. And then heading back on the road on the 27th against the San Jose Sharks with a 7 o'clock start.
More games, hopefully more opportunities for a win. I'm just being positive
Sad
here.
So we look over to our rain, which we do have news about this week. Last week, it felt like it's been quiet.
Soft, yeah.
On the 15th of the month, 7 rain players were called up for the February FIFA window. The first of one. So for Team USA, Alana Cook, Sofia Huerta, and Rose Lavelle, all representing Team USA. Quinn, they were over with Canada. Jess Fishlock with Wales, Jimena Lopez with Mexico, and Angelina with Brazil. So all of them. So 7 players from your team to be representing an international slate, and 3 of them with Team USA. It's pretty cool.
Good amount of representation there.
Yeah.
And very diverse also.
Yeah. On the 16th, the Reign named their new general manager, Nick Pereira, will be the new general manager of the team. He has an interesting sort of background in his history with the game of soccer. Here's a good look at him. He previously represented the Tacoma Stars, which is an indoor soccer team, right? But he is the captain of the U.S. beach soccer national team. Okay. Played in 5 CONCACAF championships and 3 FIFA Beach Soccer World Cups.
Wow.
He's an elected member of the U.S. Soccer Athlete Council and previously served as the executive director at Washington Youth Soccer. Now, it'll be interesting to see how he does, but at least, seeing how many hires in the NWSL are typically white men who don't necessarily have the pedigree that other candidates do. It's interesting. I'm sure all that beach soccer national team experiences is great, but I don't know. It just goes back to what we were talking about with the Seahawks hires. I'd like to see somebody with that experience already put in that position. Tell me where in that list you see general manager. You don't.
You don't, but you do see a diverse set of skills that maybe he can bring, and not the look I was hoping for there.
It's interesting. Again, you want to give people these positions to take on a new role. I mean, I hadn't recorded a weekly show in a studio before, before doing in Converge, and now we're doing this week by week. You feel comfortable each week as you continue. I don't know, though. It's interesting, and I don't entirely know how it'll go.
They're big shoes for sure, but
exactly. I mean, any general manager seat's kind of a big deal, So, talking about big deals, on the 21st, the morning of today, the club would sign outside back Sofia Huerta to a 3-year contract extension, keeping her with the club through the 2024 season. So that's a big deal. Sofia had a great standout 2021 season. She transitioned to the right back position from her prior position as forward midway through the year, named to the NWSL second 11. So going second team in the league isn't a bad stretch at all. Played the most minutes of any player in the past season, clocking over 2,000 minutes, adding 1 goal and an impressive 6 assists, and also has shown out in her U.S. women's national team call-ups in the last few windows. I know in the February window, the Team USA played, I believe it was New Zealand, and I feel really bad. The same defender for New Zealand allowed 3 own goals. Yeah, it was not a good game. It was not a good day. So I kind of feel bad for that. But one of them was Sofia's cross into the box, and it bounced off of her. But it was a great cross.
Yeah.
It just, the wrong player connected and it went in, though. So I thought it was a little bizarre. I have an app that tells me when the keeps me updated on soccer, and I kept saying USA goal. I was like, okay, who scored it? USA goal. Okay, who scored it?
Oh,
I go into the
no.
app, 3 own goal. I'm like, ooh, boy, it was a tough day. But knowing that, sometimes you have bad days, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, if you're on any national team, that is a testament to your skill. So again, I hope whoever that was, they have they're able to
Yeah.
not look at it in such a negative light, because I know that must suck. So for the upcoming moment, I mean, we don't really have anything next week. We won't get games until the middle of the month next month. That is March 18th versus the Portland Thorns at 7 o'clock, the beginning of the Challenge Cup and the Lumen Field opener for the Reign. But with that being said,
we have a new team on here.
So we are going to add the Seattle Seawolves to the group.
New hat, guys. New hat alert.
Hey now. So it's kind of interesting how this has come along, because I know that I like to say that Circling Seattle Sports gets coverage of all the pro teams, right? All the teams in the city. And for the longest time, I had toyed with the idea of rugby. I had been around rugby. I had friends who played in the sport. Hadn't done it. And the other week, the second preseason game against the Hartford Harpooners, I went out, and it's really interesting to see. We just talked about the Reign with soccer, to see the connections that soccer and football have with the game of rugby. They have a try, which is where you take the ball and you put it down. It's called a try zone, not an end zone. But that's where we get the word touchdown from, because they touch the ball down.
Connections.
So yes, adding the Seawolves are 2-time champions. They won the first 2 titles in the league in back-to-back in 2018, 2019. So you've got another winner in the city, which is never a bad thing.
No.
Speaking of winning, though, over the past week, the team played the San Diego Legion, who they beat in 2019 for the MLR championship. There's a rivalry there. So this is a rivalry game. On February 20th, winning that game 31-28, Seattle. It was a really close one throughout. Seattle was trailing early on in the first half, but then was able to make a defensive stop to keep San Diego away from any points, similar to what they did last week against the Utah Warriors, a last-minute stop to get the victory and move to 3-0. 2-0 was already the best start in franchise history. 3-0,
let's keep it going.
Yeah, keep it going. So yes, your Seawolves the last 2 seasons have been tough. Like I said, they won the first 2 Major League Rugby titles in 2018 and 2019. The last 2 years have been tough, but they're starting off really strong. The defense looks good. They've got some great veteran talent and some younger talent across the board.
Team effort, I see, because you didn't key
it's
player of the
tough
game
with
there.
rugby because Major League Rugby didn't technically get founded till 2016. They don't have a stats part of the website, so that's why I can't really do that. And again, this is a sport that I'm relatively new to, and we're kind of collecting as we go along. I know though that since I've been covering the Seawolves and I added the team, the community has been great. I mean, their response has been great. Like, they'll always like things and they'll comment on things, and they seem to be really engaged in their team, and that's great to see. So with that being said, we go over to the team news department. On the 15th, the team signed hooker Mike Brown through 2022. He will play on the team's front row. Has already played with Seattle. He started in the Hartford game, and he officially signed through the season on the 15th. On the 19th, the team signed lock Stefano Funaki through the 2022 season. He's a dynamic forward, making his Major League Rugby debut this year with Seattle. So the team is 3-0, second in the Western Conference, and their next matchup is the 26th this weekend on Saturday versus the Austin Gagronis at 5 o'clock. So that is at home. That is at Starfire. I know we talked about Starfire before, so if you've got time on Saturday, Starfire, 5 o'clock. It's a great atmosphere. The crowd really gets into it. That game against Utah that I mentioned was a Thursday at 7:30, and they were really into it.
No, that's awesome.
So if you've got time, support your rugby team, support your pro teams in Seattle. Certainly Seattle Sports, we're the show that gives all these pro teams.
This is exciting to add a rugby team too.
Yeah, and it's a sport, like I said, it's really cool seeing the similarities to what the sports that we already know about, right? So there's some similarities there. But with that being said, we touched on it at the beginning of the episode. There's a lot going on, so it's exciting though. It's exciting to know that you've got another winner up other side. you've got another winner. I mean, so what's that's if I didn't count the Seawolves, I mean, the Storm would have the most titles compared to everyone combined, but with the Seawolves, it kind of ruins things. But hey, more winners is good.
Yeah, especially when our Kraken don't seem like they're doing so good right now. So
no comment.
More positive notes here, which is good.
With that being said, as always, we will see you next Monday. That'll be the 28th. Hopefully by then we have some idea about when the lockout itself will actually be ended. Just to check in, we'll see if we've got any other new updates. Nope, no. 2 hours ago. So to my knowledge, they're still in that meeting. So hopefully
some resolution.
Yeah. I mean, the deadline is the day that we'll see you again. So with that being said, thank you again for tuning in. We're getting some fake sun. I don't know how long that'll be around. It's supposed to rain this week. So
I thought it was supposed to be very cold this week. So
could still be. So we will see you. Take care of yourself. Be well. Thank your directors. We have 2 people behind the cameras today, Matt and Salman. Salman's got his 5s on. He thinks he's really cool.
I know. Really cool. It's the Jordan crew over there for our directors.
I wore them last week, and then you guys. I didn't get the memo. What do you?
Nope,
okay.
I'm wearing Tim's.
We're good.
We're good.
Okay, so the on air and then 2 different memos. We'll see you next week. Take care of yourself. Be well.